and get picked up by a big tech company.
What Mike has built and what this team brings is it's AAA class.
And I thought, this is the model that we're going to grow Genus.
I would first look to contract out to Creating Coding Careers, where you're going to get experienced technology. The pipeline into your company for long-term growth.
So you're better off starting where you can groom and mentor and shape, people for your organization.
I've worked with coding teams for many years, and this was the first one that just picked up where we were and started continuing like they built it.
We're happy to have them in the building and see what they're developing. This is the second location. They started out with us in our building in Escondido.
Creating Coding Careers has this incredible combination of subject matter expertise in the technology field and what is actually required to do the job, as well as this network of employer partners who believe in the mission on changing what technologists.
All right, we're back. We're live. I am super excited to have this guest on. Again, we're always trying to, be out there in the streets, finding people that are putting in the work, that have gems they're going to drop. And I'm also super excited to be back from Knowledge. And man, it was amazing. So if y'all didn't attend this year, definitely going to go next year. It's a wonderful trip. And then last but not least, quick shout out before I introduce Deontay to not only the team, but all the folks that are working super hard up there in Bakersfield. And there's some folks in Fresno, and there's some folks in Modesto that are kind of just rallying around the apprentices. We got you. This is where you want to be. You want to be, picking up on the networking, figuring out how you can kind of build your own path to success. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Deontay Hall.
Hey everybody, welcome everyone. Good evening, happy Friday, good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time zone, good night. If you're in that time zone, to all my NextGen folks, to all the folks that aren't NextGen, the transitioning career folks, you guys are in for a treat this time. We have a guest speaker who was actually, man, I loved seeing the growth in this individual when it came to ServiceNow, and I'm so excited to hear about their growth, just outside of it in their story. I'm sure you guys seen the picture. I'm glad you guys all hopped in. So I'm going to welcome up, without further ado, Jeremy Infinger.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Deontay, how are you?
Pretty good, man. Yourself?
Yeah, doing good. End of the work week. Everybody I know is kind of on the West Coast. I guess you got a couple more hours. East Coast over here where I'm at in Atlanta. It's like, all right, end of the week. Let's go. Yeah,
right. Last day, man. So, usually we get into all the technical jargon about ServiceNow and everything like that. And, I was speaking to you before about, this time I don't really want to sway too much into that. And I just want to hear about your story, man. So I guess we can just kick it off with this, a little bit about yourself, man, your background.
So background. So we'll start with where I am right now. I'm a senior platform architect for ServiceNow Actual. I work in the partner design studio, focused in IT workflows, mainly in security operations. I am a veteran of the United States Navy. I did a little over 11 years. When I switched from active duty Navy, I did a skill bridge internship with ServiceNow prior to jumping into a position here on the other side.
Nice, man. And thank you for your service, man. Thank you so much for your service. That's a start, man, especially to get into an industry like this, right? Like what type of, how would you ever have thought that you would even be coming into, tech and ServiceNow, just back then, when you were first coming into the military?
Oh man, so I didn't even start as an IT. So whenever I first joined the military in the Navy, I was a fire controlman, which is responsible for weapon systems. I was all about warheads and all this kind of stuff. I was like super
Yeah.
excited, and it came up to a time where I needed to cross. There was too many fire controlmen in the Navy. There wasn't enough schools. They asked me, "Would you be interested in becoming an IT?" And I'd always loved computers. I loved working on them. I'd build my own at that point. So I was like, "All right, sure, this sounds really interesting job." So I cross-rated over to IT. Best decision I could have made for my career. Um, Whenever I did that, I got some good base system administrator training right off the bat before I went to my first duty station, which was a master station, communication station called NICTAM's Lant in Norfolk, Virginia. If you're in the Navy, 90% of the time you're going to end up in Norfolk, Virginia at some point in time. So I started there at that master station. We handled ship-to-shore communications, kind of got my hands on a little bit of everything. It was really interesting, kind of jack of all trades duty station. From there, I went overseas to Bahrain. So I was in the Middle East working for the staff of the three-star admiral over there. Again, I did a little bit of everything. I managed predator feeds. I did a island-wide computer refresh where we did like $8 million worth of computer changes for everybody on the island in the Navy. A lot of random stuff. From there, I went to a ship, the USS Leyte Gulf, which is a cruiser class ship, kind of a smaller one, about 370 people on board. I was an ISSM on there. That's where I really started to get into the cyber world a little more seriously. Really started to like policy management, figuring out how we can, increase our cyber posture and all of that. From there, I was actually by name requested to the Pentagon. So I had a pretty interesting last tour in the Navy where I was by name requested to be the personal communicator for then CNO, which is Chief of Naval Operations, the highest man in the Navy. Admiral
Wow.
requested. So I came up there, set up all his personal communications, traveled with him, was kind of on his hip to make sure that he could talk to the fleet at any given time. Saw his retirement. Got Admiral Gilday, the current Chief of Naval Operations, through about his first 6 months before I transitioned into the CIO office for Department of Navy Staff, where I became the Deputy CIO and ISSM there. And that was my last duty station. I made a lot of contacts there, and from there I jumped into the civilian world over here in ServiceNow.
Wow. Wow. So that is like, I can't, I'm speechless here. It's like, how was that experience for you, being alongside the CNO, man, like that, and just being just a personal experience type thing, aside from the business jargon. How did you feel, about that? How was that going for you, man?
I mean, it was an awesome experience for sure. Whenever you're in the armed services, you are kind of at your duty station. You're a cog in a machine, so to say. Like you have your job, you're going to handle your job. When I went to work for the CNO, it was less of that ground floor view, and now I had that 50,000-foot view. How does he see it? How is he going to operate? What is his impact at the top levels that's trickling down, and how can he best kind of impact policy? And so it was very, very much kind of a shift to be able to see that. Very interesting.
Wow. Nice. And then, hey, everybody, I see everybody saying, hey, Travis, all the other old NextGen folks I see in here. Charles Alexander, I see you in here. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into man, how did you feel when you first heard about ServiceNow, man? Like how did you, I should say, what was the transition like when you first heard about ServiceNow?
So I first heard of ServiceNow. I'd heard of it before, probably about 7-8 years ago when I was still on the ship. I'd heard rumblings about it, didn't know too much about it. But when I was at the Pentagon in the CIO office, we worked with digital transformation a lot. How can we, kind of get into the future? In the military, we kind of get behind a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. Our networks are very, very secure, but not so much current. We're not on the cutting edge of new technology because we have to vet it and make sure that it's safe for national security. When we're doing digital transformation, we want to figure out how we can move forward as best we can. And we actually worked with digital transformation office, and we want to do a proof of concept with ServiceNow. How can we prove that this is a good system for the Navy to get in touch with? And how we managed to do that was we wanted to do a low code application. How can we prove that it doesn't take a lot, that we don't need to hire 900 million administrators that are specialized in this, that anybody can use ServiceNow if they need to? What we did was we got about 20 chaplains. Those are our religious personnel, our religious leaders, very non-technical people. And we put them in a room for about a week, gave them 2 days worth of training. And the rest of the time was like, let's build an application. What do you guys need? How can we get you to a more useful place? Those guys give so many services. They are available for mentorship. They're available for obviously chaplain services. They're available to fleet and family. They are available to deploy and go all these random places. So they have about 50 or 60 different services that they offer. And they had been using a lot of various request systems to actually get that. That was very disorganized. So we got those 20 people together, non-technical, and within that week, we had a workable application that they put into use immediately. They were able to take that application, build it, use it, and grow. So I actually heard about a month ago that they took it from just being on the shore to now it's implemented on a lot of ships. And I can't get into all the details, but let me tell you, it's incredibly complicated to get something like that onto a ship's network. So the fact that it's grown that far is amazing. And the fact that it was built by some non-technical, chaplains to something that is currently being used was very inspiring to me. When I was ready to start looking for my SkillBridge internship, I thought back on that experience and I was like, ServiceNow is the future. This is where I want to be, on the cutting edge, on cloud services, on this platform. And whenever it came down to my choice between about 4 or 5 different internships, ServiceNow is where I went.
Wow. Yeah. So you got to see the I should say the good effects, the good outcomes from ServiceNow kind of before you even got into it and was like, yeah, so that's cool. That's cool. Because most of it, like me, I'm a person that when I first heard ServiceNow, I was like, what, like ServiceNow, what? Okay. I never heard of them. So the fact that you kind of got to see them in action first and see their program optimizing things and how big it got, that's pretty cool, man. To see that you're now a technical architect on the platform. So that's pretty cool. We have a question in here. I see some questions. So thank you guys for dropping them in. Don't forget you guys can drop in any questions you like. If they're technical, that's cool. We're just trying to steer this time to kind of getting 100, getting down to just how things felt and getting through it. Okay. But drop any questions you guys have. So Alfred, we got a question that says, how difficult was transitioning to civilian lifestyle for you? What helped you along the way? And what advice will you give to ServiceNow members transitioning to civilian lifestyle?
It can be tough. It can 100% be a tough transition. The thing that I can say the most is talk to people, ask questions if you're not clear on something. It is a very complicated process. All the branches have different methods of actually separating from service. Everybody has to talk to the VA. Everybody wants to find a job afterwards. Everybody has different benefits and different things that they need to focus on. They have different family concerns. So you're not going to find a one-size-fits-all guide to your transition. It has to be tailored to you. So start early, start often, ask questions, and really get involved with your TAPS programs, your transition services. Ask that prior. And whenever it's time to get into the civilian side, check your ego at the door. Don't be too proud to ask those questions. Also, don't rely too heavily on your rank. I was an E7 in the Navy. I was a chief petty officer. I work for one of the smartest people that I've ever met, and he's a former Marine, E3. He did his couple of years in, bounced out. He shows nothing but respect to everybody. I show nothing but respect to him. And I feel like in the IT field, especially, we kind of don't have as much bias because there's such a turnover in tech that even when I was still active, the younger sailors that were coming in had such a more robust experience with technical backgrounds that we didn't have that don't ask me questions attitude that sometimes you'll find in the older ranks. We're always kind of open to asking those questions. So be able to ask those questions, be open to other people's advice, listen to what they have to say, take a little piece here and a little piece there, match it to your situation. But I think probably the most important thing is to be patient with yourself. Because if you think that you're going to just figure it all out in a week or two, you
Yeah.
will not do so. It will take a long time. I just hit my year mark from the last time I put in a uniform, and I'm just now starting to kind of feel comfortable in what I'm doing on this side of the house.
Wow. So let's talk about that a little bit. You said you hit your year mark from being out of uniform, right? So how has this year been? And I guess this will go kind of with Marcus. I saw your question, by the way. How's his experience? So on a personal level, or I should say not a personal level, but on an emotional, kind of your mental level, how how does it feel to, or I should say, what did you go through in that year of time from from the mental emotions and the stress or whatever you had to deal with from the time you put that uniform on or took it off, I should say, to now, this year mark?
It's been a whirlwind of emotions. I've had a wild time frame. I was in DC. My wife also, many of you know, my wife also went through the SkillBridge internship with me. We both kind of shifted into ServiceNow. She's a developer and um, at a partner company right now, doing great work, but she quit her job. And so we went from dual income family in Washington, D.C. to single income because I still kept mine, but she was fully unpaid internship, getting the skills that she needed to transition across. So we left our place in DC, went down to Savannah where my parents are to have a little bit more support. So we moved from up to DC down to Savannah, worked in a room this big right beside each other. Well, like we were touching elbows going through this internship. It was tight. Um, got through. We both got jobs, thank goodness. Um, Saved some money for a couple of months, put the down payment on, bought a house in Atlanta. We wanted to move to Atlanta. We bought a house here. So within the first couple of months of being at the new job, bought a house, moved. I'm now spending more time at home. I get to see my son every day, which is just amazing. I get to see my wife every day. We work from home. We see each other together. It's a very different environment from working 16 hours a day on a ship and having a duty day where you're awake for 24 hours and then work again. And every 3 days you have a duty day on the ship half the time. So it is a very different world of being present with my family, which has been the best part of everything. I love my job. All that kind of stuff, but being able to spend time with my family has been such a change. But it's difficult. It's like you don't know how to have hobbies. You don't know what to do with your free time. Like if you're not working, it's like, what are you doing? You kind of freeze up a little bit. And it's taken a while. I've struggled with that, being able to, close the laptop, walk away from work. Like I don't have to sit there and study on my off time, like actually take the time off, do the work-life balance. And ServiceNow is great for it. They push it. I get yelled at for not taking enough PTO. Like they want me to succeed. They've done great. It's been nothing but positives on this side of the house for me.
Nice, nice. So it sounds like a little bit of pain for a lot of gains, a little bit of stress. Well, I don't want to say a little bit, undermine it, but I'm sure you get the point. A little, had to stick through a little bit, but man, I love to hear it, man. I love to see that the results, man. And I just want to shout out Herb really quickly, saying he's a great example of owning his journey. I threw that up real quick, and that's something I just wanted to throw up there, man, because that's exactly what you are, man. You
Herb's
owned
the
it.
best. Herb is the best. That man makes so much impact in so many lives. Like
Oh yeah,
shout out to Herb.
yeah,
Shout out. I wouldn't have been where I am right now without Herb's influence at the beginning of getting me in here, getting my wife changed over. So many people that he's influenced
yeah.
through his programs and his books and everything. Herb's the man.
Yeah, for sure. Agree. Fully agree on all that. Shout out Herb. Thanks for joining in, Herb. Let's see. We got a question by Bree, from Bree. What does your career path look like so far? Where did you start in service? So I guess we got into how you transitioned from the military. Now we're getting into this perspective of where did you first start? Where was your mind at when you first came into ServiceNow? Were you looking at technical architect or?
So when I started the internship, I knew that I wanted to be involved in the platform, but I did not know exactly what I had to do to kind of get there and what the different positions were. So I started doing some research. Now Learning has a lot of learning paths that you can go on and kind of see the day-to-day responsibilities for a bunch of these different jobs like administrator and developer and consultant and architect. So I started there. The information I got from SkillBridge helped, but more than anything, I got a good mentor and I started doing informational interviews. With my mentor, I started telling her, these are my skill sets. This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy doing, because I didn't want to I was good at my job in the Navy, but I wanted something different. I wanted something like I felt like I closed that book part of my life, and I wanted to open a new one and do something that I really really enjoyed to do. And I did some soul searching about what I like to do. I like to solve problems. That was my main thing. It's like I want to solve people's problems. I want to fix things. I want to come up with something that doesn't exist. And I was telling her my work experience working with a CNO, and I had a strong technical background, and I had certifications and all this stuff. She's like, you know what you need, because she was in sales. She's like, you need a more technical person to talk to. I know the perfect guy, my dad. So her dad is actually a principal platform architect for ServiceNow. So father daughter working at ServiceNow. So they have a family connection too. It was kind of funny that me and her ended up as a mentor mentee relationship. But I talked to her dad, Stan, and Stan was like, you sound like architect all the way. And I was confused at first because I was like, I haven't been a developer, I haven't been a consultant. Can I be an architect?
Yeah, you're thinking
Like
like
I
the
was
climb.
very worried about, like, do I have the skill set? Do I have the experience to be able to do that? And I got kind of a 50-50 mix of people. Some were really supportive, and some were like, get out of here, go be a developer for 5 years and then come be an architect. I took that advice, said thank you, and said I'm going to try this architect path out, because I
Yeah.
really liked what it was going towards. I was comfortable talking with that CIO, CXO level person. I was comfortable kind of solving problems and putting things together in interesting ways, and that's what I wanted to do with my life and my time. And those informational interviews were super key to giving me the confidence to jump forward in the interview processes and really apply for those architect type positions.
Nice. Nice. And we got another. I can't see the user. I'm trying to look at the user's name. It's showing me LinkedIn user, so I apologize. But we got somebody that says, "How long was it before you became a platform architect from starting in ServiceNow?" Oh, Mi's from London. I'm sorry, she said it.
I
Sorry about
finished
that.
I finished on October 29th of my internship, and I started October 31st as a platform architect.
Wow.
So I had no time, but I also had timed my skill bridge just right, where I had like 100 days of leave that I had to burn, because I was just in positions where I wasn't able to take a lot. I took it at the beginning. I pieced it off, and ended up with 2 weeks on the backside of my skill bridge internship. So I basically had finished the internship. You got 2 weeks, and then you don't have health insurance. So I was a little bit freaking out
Yeah.
about getting my position. Um, ServiceNow, I love them to death. They're not the fastest hiring company in the world. I went through 7 rounds of interviews. It took 2.5 months to get my offer.
Wow.
So it was hefty. It was a long time from start to finish. And I had other offers that I was like hedging and pushing them off and dodging phone calls, like, please
Yeah.
give me, a couple more days to see if this position worked out, because I had the cybersecurity background. This was a SecOps architect on a really interesting team. The partner design studio does something that no one else does in the entire company. There's only 10 architects that do this job. And it's like, I really wanted it.
Yeah.
So luckily it worked out timing wise, where I didn't gap anything. I finished the internship and said, I don't need time off after this. I'm ready to hit the ground. Let's go. And started that next week.
Wow. So once again, man, owning that journey, man, owning that journey. We got a question from Philip here. From employer perspective, I like this one. What makes vets different? What should they look for? Or what should they look for to support the transition to civilian life?
Vets have such a level of responsibility that you just cannot teach. We are self-sufficient. We are proud. We are take a different kind of eyeball on things. We have a responsibility that is ingrained in us in our service that is extremely valuable to an employee. They know that whenever they're getting a veteran, that person has been through some stuff, that they have done a hard job, that they have sacrificed, that they know kind of how to take control of a situation, not freak out, and adapt and overcome. So a veteran background is extremely valuable in the civilian sector. When you're looking to transition into civilian life, what I can most recommend is talk to a lot of people and figure out how to take all that experience and put it into terms that civilian personnel can understand. We have a million different acronyms in the Navy, and not everybody understands what that means. So you need to figure out how to adequately take your experience in the military, put it onto paper, get people in the military to read it, get people not in the military to read your resume. Just get a bunch of different thoughts on it to make sure that what you're putting down makes sense and that you're really capturing that valuable experience that you have.
Nice, nice. And I guess that'll stem. I have a personal, my own question from that is how exactly is there a rule of thumb when it comes to, you know, kind of translating that military experience to, you know, a readable resume? Pretty much, is there any type of rule of thumb that you followed, or any type of, you know, universal thing that everybody should kind of keep in mind?
Basically, I write it. I tried to write all of my things like, if I had never met someone in the military, would I understand what this person did? Like, if I had completely never been involved in the military, if you were writing it for your grandma to read and she had never been out to your ship or been to your unit or something like that, would she understand what you're trying to get across? And that's where I think it's really valuable to find professional contacts that are not military members. A lot of those informational interviews, people in the ServiceNow community especially have been mind-bogglingly open to like, it was that was one of the biggest culture shocks for me, was how open and honest everyone was,
Yeah.
and free with their time, to be able to have a 20-30 minute conversation, and it'd be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to say, does this make sense to you, do you understand it, do you have any suggestions for things that I could maybe write it differently? And I had a bunch of people look at my resume before I kind of shot it off and really applied for it. And also, you kind of got to tailor it to positions, because I put in for architect positions, but I also put in for the solution consultant positions, also developer positions. So I had about 4 different resumes that were active at any given time, with different terminology and different focus points. You know, my program manager resume was much different than my developer one, which was much more technical, which was different than my architect one, which was more like big picture.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I see Brian has a good question here. He says, could you give perspective on what your initial onboarding and training process was? I'll put process in there, was before you were fully running in the architect role.
ServiceNow does a fantastic job of onboarding. Like, I'd switch. Like, I told you my commands. I've been to 4 or 5 different commands, and every time you show up, it's like you might get a handshake, a kick on the butt, a check-in sheet, and say good to work. Like, that's what you
Yeah.
get. ServiceNow had 3 months of training, like 3 solid months of training, and I was kind of scared, definitely imposter syndroming myself when I took this position, because I didn't realize how heavily sales forward it was. I'm very pre-sales, so I can talk about cybersecurity all day, but when you start talking about sales terms and net new ACVs and what are we doing for the quarter and what's an MBO, I was like, I don't know any of that stuff. Training was there. There were people available. There was self-paced training that was available. There was a checklist. There was a weekly, like, everything was kind of timed out, and it culminated in something called Shark Camp, which was this week-long sales thing. You had teams, and you had to do sales pitches and build demos and put all this stuff together, which my team won. Point of being proud on my team won our Shark Camp. People in ServiceNow that understand that's a big deal. But
Nice.
the onboarding was fantastic. They did everything possible to be comfortable. You had interviews with your managers. You had an onboarding buddy. So I had another architect on my team who was my onboarding buddy. We met weekly at the minimum. Really, we met more than that, and to go over different things. I can always ask them questions. We still talk all the time. So they were very dedicated to making you set up for success.
Yeah, very supportive. Wow, and I've seen that even from what I've went through in ServiceNow. Helping out with the NextGen folks, they are super supportive, man. I love that about the ServiceNow ecosystem, and I feel like a lot of businesses need to follow suit. Um, we have a question here from Anna. She says, "What do you like best about being a platform architect?"
That it's not the same every day. Like I get to work on so many different things. I get to talk to people. I get to do technical stuff. I have a little bit of everything in my day. We do a lot of ideation, a lot of, I did a workshop. I had to go up to DC to talk to Accenture, and we did this week-long workshop where it's like, we want to build something. Let's get together. Let's figure out what we're going to build. We did this big design thinking Miro board, and we talked through all these different problems. And at the end, we came out with this really awesome idea. And then it was, let's build it. Here's the technical ways that we're going to build it. And now it's in build and all this other stuff. So it's an interesting day-to-day process. Like I work focused in SecOps. I have 13 different offerings, 4 of which are like in the assessment phase right now, which makes me really busy, and I love it. I don't want to sit there. I took this position because I knew it would be fast paced. I knew that I would, do a lot of different things, and that was really exciting for me.
Nice. Yeah, that's always good. A job that keeps you busy and changes it up. I love that, man. That's really cool. So what, let's see, what's Skill Bridge and why it's useful? Oh, and then I want to know really quickly, how did you transition when it comes to like just the financial aspect and like, coming into ServiceNow, how did it feel, when you had that, I don't want to get into specifics, obviously, when you had that offer, how did it change, kind of your outlook, and do you have any plans for kind of climbing, or is it like, hey, this is where I want to be?
A deep soul breath left my body whenever I got that job offer. It's like you're so tense. You're putting out all these applications. It's so stressful. You're leaving the military. I mean, most of us who's in the military, when's the last time you had a job interview? Never. Like I had an interview whenever I got by name to the CNO. That's the only interview that I ever had, unless you did like a Sailor of the Quarter board or something. But no one's had a job interview in years. So it was very stressful. The financial stuff is fantastic. The military it's a proud service. It's great. It does not pay the best in the world. It doesn't pay the worst in the world, but it doesn't pay the best in the world. Getting into the civilian side was eye-opening, but it also made me have to learn a little bit more about how pay works, because it wasn't just the paycheck. It's like you've got your pay split into all these different things. I'm pre-sales, so I have commissions and I have a base pay, and there's restricted stock units and health insurance and all these other things you have to kind of navigate. So again, asking questions. I am a big question. I will raise my hand if I don't understand something. So the first 2 weeks in, I was like, I really need somebody to explain all these different parts of my pay so I fully understand it. I don't want to mess up taxes at the end of the year, which are very different than when you're in the military. And within 2 days, I had a one-on-one meeting with someone with a financial background at ServiceNow who walked me through literally my entire contract and everything that was all of my pay, how it was coming, and all of that stuff. So it was super useful, very different, but it made me feel much more comfortable and much more ready to, focus on my job and not so much on that financial piece. That piece was taken care of. Now I could focus on my job.
Nice. And that's really good. That's a really good kind of layout I feel like you had. And I feel like that's a good layout to express. And a lot of people, if you hear that, that's a really good plan, to make sure you have somebody that's, kind of helping you out with that process. So if there's, I don't see any questions here in the chat. I want to be respectful of your time, man. So we'll start to wrap it up. But before we do that, I want to ask, man, if you can leave, I got 2 pieces of advice that I want to ask you for the crowd. And one is for the transitioning folks out of the military and what they should do. And, just one solid piece of advice for them. And then one is for the folks that are just transitioning into the tech career, into the tech field, period. And a piece of advice for them. So I guess we'll start with the former. Do you have, any strong advice for those coming through NextGen that was in your shoes, or that are in your shoes, the ones that you wore and stepped out of?
take advantage of your time to the fullest, especially for those that are going through the Skill Bridge program. The Skill Bridge program is so valuable, and there are so many of our brothers and sisters who were not able to take advantage of the program. Try not to take it for granted. You've signed up to do a 40-hour a week, 5 days a week. Get that time in. You're not gonna be handheld for 40 hours a week, and at least in the ServiceNow Skill Bridge. There's free time, there's study time, there's all this other stuff. And it's going to be really tempting to, I've worked all this time, now I can kind of relax and breathe. You're almost there. I promise you're almost there, but take advantage of this time. Push and focus. With the Rise Up initiative, training 1 million people in ServiceNow, there's going to be a lot of people gunning for the same types of jobs. What are you doing to stand out? What are you doing to differentiate yourself? It's very important that you focus on that and figure it out. The training is great, but what are you doing with that training? Are you in your personal developer instance? Are you building stuff? Are you learning in your free time? It's going to make all the difference. And you're going to quickly kind of see the difference between people who just do the bare minimum and the people that are really pushing towards getting that civilian career unlocked for themselves. So really take advantage of the time that you're offered in the Skill Bridge and work it to your advantage.
Yeah. As an assistant in that program, as a TA in that program, a former TA in that program, I can verify everything he just said, and I can vouch for that. You see it. You definitely see it. You see it from the outside, and I'm sure if you're in those shoes, you'll see it from the inside. Once the time comes for the jobs and everything like that. So I would definitely hold on to that. That's definitely a gem. So I guess now we'll get into the second piece of advice. Just those who are coming into tech. Just they've never really been in tech. Let's say somebody coming from the warehouse like I was years ago. What would you say to them?
Hey man, I came from the warehouse too. I was working
Nice.
I was working a warehouse job before I was in the Navy, man. But don't try to boil the ocean. And what I mean by that is don't try to learn everything at once. The tech is such a vast field. Someone says, I want to be in tech. I want to be in IT. What does that mean? Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do cybersecurity? Do you want to develop? Do you want to, be a system administrator? Do you want to be on a help desk? There's so much stuff to learn, and ServiceNow has such a breadth to it that you're not going to learn it all at once. So be patient with yourself. Be a little bit humble. Don't get too upset with yourself if you don't know everything all at once. Learn a little piece. Get comfortable with it, go to the next one, learn the next little piece, get comfortable with it. And one of the big things, especially with all those certifications that you're going to take, don't learn things to take a certification, learn things for your career and your future. If you go in there and data dump the stuff from your certifications, you're doing a disservice to yourself, because like for the CSA, for example, very important intro cert that everybody's going to need to get at some point, more than likely. That information is going to just keep on coming up and coming up and coming up. I use stuff from my CSA every single day on my job. And if I would have data dumped it, it would just make my job so much worse and harder to do. And I'd have to go back and review so many different things. So learn for the long term. Don't learn for the short.
Nice. I love that, man. And then a lot of the things that you said about, just kind of focusing on one part of the platform and not getting upset when you don't understand the larger parts. If you just started, man, you're speaking to my old self, man. That's how I was when I first came to the ServiceNow platform, and you get overwhelmed. So, and I would say not even just ServiceNow and tech in general. So that's definitely something I want those folks to hold on to. And then the other advice he gave to the next gen folks, really want you guys to hold on to that. Really appreciate everybody for coming in. Is there anything you want to say, by the way, Jeremy? Any last words or anything like that?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. I was able to talk to, I've been able to talk to a couple of the Skill Bridge groups. I think I've done it about 3 times now. Herb's had me come in and do the QA. I like to give back. I encourage everyone here to give back whenever they're in a position to do so, answer questions. I'm always kind of available. Am working. It is busy. It might take me a minute, but I will get back to you. I promise. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Jonte, thank you, and Mike, for doing what you do with these podcasts. They're super useful for so many people. I've watched a bunch of them, and you're doing great work here. So just happy to be part of everything.
I'm glad to hear that, man. And I love you being. I love that you came and gave your time, man. So I love you being here, man. I appreciate you for your time. Love you guys all being here and here. Joining in, tuning in with us. Everybody who's here. Shout out Herb, shout out Anna, Brian, everybody who's here. We saw Emily in here, who's also, that was a whole nother story to get into. But we'll make sure to save that for the next episode that we have Jeremy on, hopefully future episodes. So
for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Jeremy, for coming on, and I thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening.